I had a very similar experience on Battlestar. I auditioned 6 or 7 times for Starbuck.
Really?
And yeah, just kept going back because they did not want me.
Katie, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you? I need to
Fantastic.
pin you. Let me pin you. I'm learning my, what's it called? My learning things, my podcast learning things. My words have not caught up to my brain yet this morning. My brain is, I'm all over the place. I need more coffee.
Still in coffee mode. I love it. Well, look, I just listened to your last episode with Jonathan Frakes, and the thing I loved about it, so I usually moderate a lot of conventions. In that podcast, I felt like I was on a fly on the wall with a conversation with 2 guests at a convention. There's so much insight and knowledge I learned about just based on your conversation, not just about conventions, but also that you auditioned for Roswell. I loved Roswell. I loved that show. You auditioned for Isabel. How did that all come about?
Pretty much like every other audition and job, when they set out a breakdown. Everyone sort of, I think, is familiar with the word breakdown. It's like a breakdown of a character, a breakdown of a show, and they tell you what roles are available, what the age range is, and then your agent will send your headshot and your resume saying, I think they're right for this character, and the casting director says yay or nay, and then you end up going in and auditioning with 100 of your closest friends, if not more. And it was just one of those things. Catherine and I are very similar in so many ways that it actually makes a lot of sense. And so it was just an audition. I was very green. I had just moved to California in 98, and that's when I was auditioning. So my audition would have been like, one of the first probably massive pilots that I auditioned for sure.
That's incredible. I feel like this podcast is great for any creative type that wants to get into acting, or any fan of any of these sci-fi genres or shows that we all fell in love with. What was the biggest inspiration to create the podcast?
Yeah. So during, right before the pandemic, between Mandalorian and my show Another Life on Netflix, I had downtime because I was like contracted. I couldn't do much of anything. And I was so bored. And so I said to my boyfriend, now husband, I was like, can we just start like a YouTube channel or something? I am so bored. And so we started this YouTube channel, which was basically, Katie did. And I went out and I did a lot of different things and made a fool out of myself and had so much fun. And I loved it. But the thing that I loved the most about it were the conversations I was having with people when I would go out and interview for the episode or something like that, or when I would just talk to the camera. I loved that. I loved the conversation element with the fans as well, or the person who was watching at home. And when work started back up again, it just got too hard. It was too hard to produce episodes of that magnitude. And we were burnout and making no money on it. So it was just really just for fun. And then I thought to myself, and originally with one of my friends, Christian Harloff, we decided, he was like, I've been thinking about something. And I was like, I've been thinking about something too. And I kind of want to talk to you about it. And that was the first conversation where he was like, I think you should start a podcast. And I was like, I was going to tell you I wanted to start a podcast. And so he really helped me get it off the ground and figure out what it was. And that's sort of how it started. I wanted to have authentic conversations with my friends, people I had worked with, people I haven't worked with, but I met on the convention circuit, that I never really have had the opportunity to sit down uninterrupted and just talk for an hour and a half. Life is so busy. We've got kids, we've got work, we've got all of these things that, and we have these 5-minute interchanges where we're like, oh yeah, I talked to him last week. Well, did you really, or did you just spend 5 minutes? You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I wanted to have conversations with people again. And I wanted to give people listening and watching at home that fly on the wall experience where it felt very easy, like you caught up with 2 friends having coffee.
Absolutely. And that episode with Jonathan Frakes specifically felt like I was at like a dinner with the two of you and you guys happened to be having a discussion right in front of me. It was fantastic. What have you learned about yourself through doing this podcast?
I have ADHD, which I had no idea that I had. I just thought I was always really good at like creating lists and multitasking. Like I didn't realize that I had a superpower. And when I started the podcast, I said to my husband, because we listened back to my first episode with Bryce Dallas Howard, and he said, "Would you like some constructive criticism?" And I was like, or he said constructive feedback. I don't think he said criticism. That's not a word my husband would use that much. And I said, sure. And he said, you got to stop interrupting. And I was like, what? But that's like a conversation. And he goes, no, you got to give her the time to talk and to answer the question. And he goes, and I know that you want to say something, but you got to remember it and then come back to it. And he goes, it's hard. It's a thing. And so I started thinking about that a little bit more. And then I was talking to my therapist and I was talking to him about this, and he goes, would you like my diagnosis? And I was like, diagnosis? Not me. I just came to you to talk about my shit. I don't have a diagnosis. What are you talking about? And I said, sure, fine. Tell me what my diagnosis is, doc. And he said, you're classic ADHD. And I was like, what? And he started running me through all of the things. And I was like, oh my God, I have ADHD. And I get off and I go back to my husband and I tell him, and he goes, well, yeah, I knew that. Like everyone around me knew that except me. So what it did was it gave me the desire to learn how to have conversations with people again and actually listen. And that was a tremendous tool for me to finally know that I needed to relearn something. It wasn't because I was rude. I always just thought I'm just a bad friend. I just interrupt people all the time. It's just me. I'm a terrible person. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, it's just my brain. Okay. So it's not I'm an asshole. I just need to figure out how to control this a little bit better. And that was invaluable to me to learn that.
Wow, that's incredible. I feel like I'm learning so much just about communicating through this short, brief conversation. So you've had so many incredible guests on your show. Who's if a bucket list interview or a bucket list podcast guest that you'd like to have?
God. I mean, just pulling from my childhood, Sigourney Weaver, Linda Hamilton, Lucy Lawless, there are these women that shaped my persona, who I wanted to be as a performer and ultimately as I think a woman. And I would love to interview them, to share space with them would just be glorious. I who's on my list? I just, oh God, Bryan Cranston's on my list that I would love to talk to. My friend Aaron Paul, talking about Bryan Cranston, Aaron Paul, the first show I ever did when I moved, the first lead of a pilot I ever got was a show called Locust Valley. And Aaron Paul was in it. We were 18-year-old little kids. Alexandra Breckenridge was in it from Virgin River, who's coming on the show. I haven't seen Alex since she was 16 and I was 18.
Wow.
And we were on this show together. It didn't get picked up, obviously. But so I haven't really talked to him since then. Not really. I've seen him every once in a while, but we don't really talk, So people like that I've worked with that I haven't talked to for many years, I would love to sit down with.
Now, in your last episode, there's a tidbit that you gave that surprised me, actually, but it makes so much sense. You said that if you can go back to a show and be on it for like the next 10 years, it would be Longmire. And that show's absolutely incredible. phenomenal. And looking back, I would say, yeah, I probably, if I was an actor, I probably would choose that show as well. Can you talk about your experience on that show? And over the years of playing Vic, what did you enjoy the most or envision for seeing that character across that 5-season arc?
Yeah. So I think what I loved about her was that she was every one of us. Like women identified with her. She was a real woman that could be any person on the street. And I think that's what drew me to her, was that she was just so normal. And her struggles were normal. Her love was normal. Her pain was normal. It was all grounded in this, oh, I know someone who went through that, you know? And that's the first and only time I've ever played someone like that. I mean, that people know of course. I've played people before that are very grounded in our world, but I don't know. And I loved her story. I loved her arc. I loved that she was a fish out of water and she moved to this place because she followed her husband, but she also had to get out of town. And she finds herself in this town that is the last place she wants to be. And it ends up being her home. And she ends up finding her heart and her soul in this place and these people. And it's just such a beautiful story to me. And I loved her. I loved her relationship with Walt. You know, I loved working with Rob Taylor.
Rob is incredible. Yeah. I didn't know he was Australian until I listened to your show.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? Australians have the ability to do accents like none other. You know, like you give me an Australian and you throw them any accent and they can do it. It's so weird. I don't even understand it. But and he and I had this like really, and we still do, but this like really beautiful chemistry where we're peers, but he's also a teacher. And that's what Vic and Walt had. And I don't know, I miss the show. I miss those people, you know?
Well, luckily now you can reconnect with everybody doing this podcast. I feel like it's you can catch up with everybody kind of doing this. I do want to ask you about look, I'm a big Power Ranger fan. I love Power Rangers. And I know that you were in that Adi Shankar, his bootleg Universe Power Ranger thing. 2 questions. How did that all come about? And were you a fan of the franchise prior to working with Adi on that?
Oh my God. Yeah. So I grew up on Power Rangers. I loved it. And I auditioned for Power Rangers. One of my first auditions in California. I don't even remember what it was for. I don't remember anything about it. I just know I went in on a Power Rangers audition when I first moved to California for something. And I loved it. I always loved what Saban did. Sure. But I always, like Adi, had this understanding that there is a growth to this story as well that could exist. You know, the audience of Power Rangers, they're my age now. Like, you know,
yeah.
I would love to see blood and guts in Power Rangers because the story is so cool.
Sure.
And so when my old manager was like, you know, I know this guy and he's doing this thing. And as soon as he said Pink Power Ranger, I was like, and he said gritty Pink Power Ranger bootleg fan film. And I was like, I'm in. I think we did it for free too. Like, I don't think we got paid. I don't remember. If we did, it was in like bubblegum and duct tape.
Sure.
But it was so much fun. And again, I love that shit. I love it. I love sci-fi and action and fantasy. It is every space in my brain when I think about film and television is that. It's that's what I want to see. That's what I want to do.
You and me both. It's something. So with Power Rangers, it was on the air for 30 consecutive years, which is crazy to me. If you really take a step back and think about it, there's not too many shows that have been on the air that long.
Yeah.
Not even like kid shows besides Sesame Street. Not very many. But it seems as if they're going to reboot that universe. If this were your choice, would you rather see that 30-year lineage continue or reboot it as we've seen so many other things do?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, selfishly for myself, I would love to see it rebooted. Like, I would love to, I don't know. I want to see something different. I want to see it taken to the next level. You know, I want to see, there was something about Power Rangers that was so, like we were all in on the joke too.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
What I would love to see is, and I know this is going to upset a lot of Power Rangers fans, but I would love to see that thrown away. And I would love to see a Power Rangers that is grounded and real and gritty and, you know, let's PG-13. It doesn't need to be R, fine. Sure. But like, go for it a little bit. You know what I mean? And
everything else is evolving.
Yeah. And like cast really good actors and like see what happens, you know?
Absolutely. Now, your love of sci-fi is very apparent. I love sci-fi as well. Matter of fact, Battlestar Galactica was really what jump-started my drive into sci-fi. I was introduced to that show, ironically, by a friend of Richard Hatch. His name was Mike Wellman. And I ate Richard. And he was like, you got to watch this show. Just watch the show. I watched it and I was instantly hooked. With sci-fi being, I feel like sci-fi can sometimes lead to being cautionary tales. What are some of your favorite standout moments from some of the sci-fi roles that you've had?
God, I mean sci-fi, the cautionary tale is so true. You know, one of the things that's so great about science fiction is that you're able to touch on subjects that you wouldn't necessarily be able to in something based in our world, because you immediately get dismissed as, oh, it's not real. It's sci-fi or it's fantasy. They can talk about that. That's not real. You know, when we on Battlestar were the suicide bombers.
All right.
That was a very crazy storyline. But we were allowed to do it because it's sci-fi, you know? Things like that I've always appreciated, that, you know, you're right. It is a cautionary tale. And that is, I think good sci-fi makes you question your existence, makes you think about the future and the past. That is good sci-fi, you know?
Absolutely. Now, you also have an extensive background in voice acting work. Obviously, Bo-Katan is incredible, but also Poison Ivy and Silk Spectre. We have the Watchmen animated film. Part 1 just recently came out, which is incredible. I actually think it's probably the most faithful adaptation of the Watchmen that I've seen besides the actual book itself.
100%. Yeah.
Can you talk about your experience working on the Watchmen specifically? Because I'm assuming that you read the comic book prior to even booking this role. So what does it mean for you to step into the role or to the world of the Watchmen and in such a faithful adaptation of the series of the
Absolutely. Comic? Well, I think that was honestly one of the, I'm looking for it on my bookshelf. I don't think it's here right now. I think it's at my bedside table actually. But I think that was one of the questions I had when this was brought up to me, is like, well, why this? You know, it's been done. What are we doing? And when I realized that it was going to be so true to the book, that's when I was like, okay, let's do this. You know, I love that book. I still do. Same. There are moments like in like my life when you can sort of go back and look at your childhood and when something shapes you. I think the moment I realized that there was a difference between a comic book and a graphic novel as a kid, moments like that broadened my horizons and my imagination. And The Watchmen is one of those books where it changed the game. And to be able to be a part of that and to respect it in that the way that we did, I think is really cool. That's not to say that I didn't love the movie. Come on. Of course I did. I mean, Malin Ackerman is crazy good. And it was a great film.
Yeah.
And there's, if done correctly, there is a place for many different adaptations of a certain property. This is going back to the Power Rangers. If done respectfully and correctly, there are many different iterations of things that can exist that can be successful. And so I just, it meant the world to me. Again, Poison Ivy.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I am literally being Poison Ivy for Halloween because my daughter found in a 50-cent book bin at the library a DC Power Girls comic book.
I love that.
Fucking obsessed with comic books now. Finding comic books for a 3-year-old is not the easiest thing, mind you. But so we have found comic books for her. And thankfully, they have the young readers, which is phenomenal. Thank you. But she is Wonder Woman. Everywhere she goes, she is now Wonder Woman. So she has to be Wonder Woman and I am Poison Ivy. And she knows that mommy actually played Poison Ivy. And so I have to be here for Halloween. And coming up with a Poison Ivy costume that is Halloween appropriate when you have children is not easy, by the way. So it's she also told my husband that he's Supergirl. So we're gonna have to figure that one out.
That is incredible. Well, that's gonna be the best family photo of all time.
Yeah.
I got to ask about Bo-Katan because, look, you voiced this character and then you brought the character to life, which is something we haven't seen done often. When did you have your pinch me moment of like, I'm getting to be this character in real life?
Oh my God. So many of them and so many different times. I think it happened constantly while I was working. I think the first moment I stepped on set was crazy. I think the moment when I got scanned for my suit and they didn't have to cast my body.
Sure.
Like I had to be fully cast for my Power Ranger suit. Like
Did you really?
With the fully cast. So to be able to step on a pedestal in my bra and underwear and have them spin me in a circle for 5 seconds and be done, and then have my suit fit like a glove, crazy. Like that's a pinch me moment. Like that is the moment you realize you've like stepped into like a big budget project, like property, you know what I mean? But that was a huge moment. I think season 3 was a pinch me moment in that when they said they were going to send, I knew I was contracted for all 8 episodes,
Sure.
But I didn't know I was in all 8 episodes. I just knew that they held me for 8 episodes contractually. So when they dropped the scripts off at my house, and season 2, I only got pages. And season 3, I got a pile of 8 scripts brought to my house, like, and handed to me. And then I started reading them and I literally put them down and I went into my husband and went, I think I'm in the whole thing. Like, I think Bo-Katan is season 3. And he was like, oh shit, cool. And I was like, no, this is terrifying. This is terrifying. I didn't know this. That was a crazy moment. I was terrified. I was terrified by the responsibility in that moment.
That is,
yeah.
That's so incredible, though. That's so cool. I mean, you're getting to live out your dreams, my dreams, everybody's dreams. That's so cool. From everything that you've done, from getting out here in '98 to working on some of these Star Wars things, what's been kind of like your biggest takeaway and lesson that you've learned along the way? I know that journey's still obviously continuing, but like right now where you're at, like what do you think is you've learned the most from?
Oh my God. So much. I mean, I know that sounds crazy. So much. Like, I wish that like I could go back and talk to my 18-year-old self and say, try not to grow up too fast. Slow down. Appreciate these jobs that you're getting. I was trying to amass jobs I was just trying to climb a ladder. I never stopped to appreciate where I was because I knew it would end and I'd need to find the next thing. So I was always looking forward instead of staying present. Oh. And I think that looking back on it now, after being in the business for more than 25 years, it went so fast. It went so fast. And so I think that's what I've learned, is to just appreciate what I had or what I have, you know. And I think that comes with age too, though. You know, I think that comes with age. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you a couple of geeky questions here. And some of these, most of these you should be able to answer. With Bo-Katan, is there a character you've crossed over with so many different Star Wars legacy characters, even characters that are beloved by fans for generations? Are there any characters that you'd like to see Bo-Katan interact with that she hasn't yet?
Oh my God. In live action or animation?
Oh, both. That's a good, both.
So in live action, I would love to see her with Satine.
Sure.
I would love to see that, even if it's in flashbacks, obviously. And I would love to, we saw her with Luke. So, you know, I've always questioned whether or not Bo knew Yoda.
Sure.
It's a question on my mind. And I've asked, and we've talked about it. And, you know, I think everyone is just sort of, you know, I might have to keep that between me and them. But it's, you know, it's one of those really cool things where when you're aware of timeline and you look at the Filoni-verse,
sure,
and you look at the films and you see where they fit together, timeline becomes really precious and cool. And there are so many really wonderful characters that exist in Bo's timeline. Yep. So I don't know. I think that, you know, the world is the universe is large.
Oh, listen, I did a whole Star Wars chronological watch.
Did you watch?
Well, I have a whole, not just me. That's how I got my little girl into it. I'll see if we have a whole chronological order Star Wars thing that we watched together. I can't find it right now, but it's long. It's like 150 different entries. We included everything, the Ewoks show, everything. We did it all in chronological order. So
how long did it take you?
Oh, it took 9 months. I'm currently doing Marvel now chronologically, and I've started in March 17th, and I won't be done until March of next year.
Yeah.
I'm dedicated when it comes to that stuff. But look, you've got to play in the sandbox of DC as Poison Ivy, voice acting as Poison Ivy, obviously Silk Spectre. Is there any characters live action? I mean, also you were in the Arrowverse, but is there any other characters that you'd like to bring to live action for James Gunn's DCU?
Oh my gosh.
Black Canary, maybe?
I mean, Black Canary. Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I still have this dream of playing Poison Ivy in live action.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
I just, there's something about her. There's a pain in her that I loved playing when I voiced her. I find that so many characters, so many villains are cautionary tales. Yeah. And, you know, we're talking about this with my daughter right now because in her books, Ivy is not bad. Harley's not bad. You know, there's so many characters that haven't turned yet in these books. And the other night, when we were going to bed, she was like, "It's okay, mommy. Bad characters do good things and good characters do bad things. It doesn't make them bad." And I was like, yeah, exactly. And that's, you know, she's not even 3 yet, but I think that's it. I think that I would love to play the pain in Ivy in live action. I think it'd be so cool.
Oh yeah, there's so many layers to that character. Now, the
Yeah.
last question I have for you is I actually think your podcast is perfect on so many levels. But for a lot of young aspiring actors out there, you're very open with your journey in acting, auditions that things that you've auditioned for and not gotten, and obviously the things that you have gotten. For any actor that's listening to your podcast out there, what's the one bit of advice that you would give them to kind of like motivate them and just carry on the process?
Oh my God. The industry is changing as we speak.
Sure.
It is a very, very different landscape than it was even 2 years ago. And I don't quite know what it's going to look like. And there are so many reasons why, COVID, the strike, productions going overseas, AI, streamers realizing they weren't as profitable as they had thought. There are so many people not going to movies anymore. There are so many reasons why our industry is changing. I think that one of the things that drives me, because you cannot control what this industry is going to use you for, right, see you as. There's so much of it that is out of your control. But the one thing that I think still rings true to me is I heard once that if you want to be an actor, if you want to act, you can do that tomorrow. You can do that anywhere. You could do it with your phone. You could do it on a stage at your school. You could do it at a local theater. You could do it on Broadway. You could do it, on YouTube. You could, there's so many different ways to be an actor.
Sure.
If you want to be famous, I have no idea how to do that. If you want to be an actor that makes millions and millions and millions of dollars and be that 0.0001%, and that's your goal, no one has any advice for you, because there's no rhyme or reason to why it worked for some people and it didn't work for others. So I say that if you love acting and you want to be an actor, don't let anyone stop you. Do it tomorrow, because that joy, that is the thing that you need to hold on to, because it's going to be hard.
Incredible. Now, can you tease any upcoming guests that you have coming up?
Oh my gosh. Who's coming up? Who's in the can? Oh my Lord. Alexander Breckenridge from Virgin River. Who's coming up? Live event with Trisha Helfer in Nashville.
Oh, what? That's so cool.
Nashville. We're doing a convention in Nashville the end of October, and Trisha Helfer is a guest live for that podcast recording.
Oh, that is so cool.
I am literally racking my brain trying to figure out who's in the can still that hasn't come out. Oh my God. Rachel Harris is coming on. I am literally looking at my calendar right now to figure out who the hell is on our show. That's a list of all the people I wanted to have on. We got Lou Diamond Phillips coming out.
Oh, I can't do a Longmire reunion. Here we go.
Grant Gustin.
This is stacked. I love it.
Mark Paul Gosselaar.
Oh, come on now.
Rebecca Mader, Paulina Paraskova. You guys, it is, and that is just that's just me pulling a couple of them. There's so many on that list still. And more. I'm so excited. Paulina was such a beautiful interview. And people will probably be like, why is Paulina Paraskova on Katee Sackhoff's podcast? Paulina and I have known each other for like 10 years. She is such a strong, smart, resilient woman. And she was one of the top earning supermodels in the world for a real long time. And she's such a gorgeous woman inside and out. It makes complete sense that she's on the podcast. And it's such an interesting conversation because we talk a lot about the loss of Rick and her marriage. And it's a wonderful conversation, and it's fun. So I'm just excited. I'm excited for so many reasons and so many guests that I haven't recorded yet that are coming up too.
The podcast is incredible. Like I said, the Jonathan Frakes episode came out this morning, and it was the first thing I listened to. And incredible job. I love listening to your show every Tuesday. Thank you so much for your time. You're amazing.
Thank you.
And I'd love to get you on my Power Ranger podcast. So
my God, I would love to.
Look, you were phenomenal. Thank you so much for your time. And I'd love to chat with you again about more guests that you have coming up. But yes, thank you so much.
No, absolutely. It's my pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time. And like, I don't know. I love the podcast. I love doing it. So
it's therapeutic for me too. And it makes me, I feel like it also makes me a better communicator doing my job. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, you're very good at your job as well. You've got some great questions. So I love it.
What's the weirdest thing you ever autographed?
A boob.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. It says a lot about the characters I play that I'm also signing boobs.